The atmosphere in the auction room at the Grand Plaza was electric with tension. The high ceilings and sleek, modern design of the building created a space filled with luxury and power. Investors, moguls, and business leaders from across the country gathered, all waiting for the start of the most anticipated auction of the year. Today, Emma Davis wasn't just here for a business transaction. She was here to prove herself. At 28, Emma had already established herself as a rising star in real estate investment. But this auction wasn't just about a piece of land. It was about taking her career to the next level. The property up for grabs was prime real estate, something that could change the dynamics of the entire market. Anyone who secured it would not only gain significant wealth, but also immense power in the industry. Emma had no intention of letting it slip away. As she entered the room, all eyes turned toward her. Her tailored red suit, paired with a sharp pencil skirt and sleek heels, commanded attention. Her brown eyes scanned the crowd, her expression focused, betraying none of the nerves she might have been feeling. This was her moment, and she wouldn't back down, despite the bustling room. Emma's attention was drawn to Daniel Hart, sitting at the back with an air of quiet authority. The CEO of Hart Enterprises, Daniel was known as a ruthless businessman with the ability to crush anyone who stood in his way. He wasn't just a wealthy mogul, he was a symbol of success, an icon of power in the real estate world. She had heard rumors about Daniel, the way he dominated auctions, the way he controlled markets, and the way people feared him. But Emma wasn't intimidated. She had worked her entire life to prove she didn't need anyone's help to succeed. This auction was her chance to prove it, not just to Daniel, but to herself. The auction begins. As the auctioneer started the bidding, the tension in the room became almost palpable. The crowd was silent, all eyes on the bidding screen. Daniel Hart, as expected, was the first to make a move. His voice was calm, but his bid sent a ripple of energy through the room. Emma wasn't shocked. She had known that Daniel would bid heavily on the property, but she had also prepared herself. She had anticipated this. She wasn't about to back down. The numbers climbed, and with each increase, the stakes grew higher. She could feel the weight of the room's gaze, but Emma remained calm. Her strategy was simple: don't just match him, but outsmart him. Every move he made, she countered with precision. Daniel, however, remained unflinching, his gaze steady, calculating. He wasn't fazed by her persistence. In fact, a part of him respected it. Most people would have folded by now, but she wasn't like most people. She was playing a game she understood. And for the first time in a long while, Daniel found himself intrigued. The auction reached its final round, and the price soared to an astronomical figure. The tension in the room was thick, and just as everyone thought the bidding would stall, Emma made her final move. Her bid was bold. Daring, the room fell silent. Daniel paused, his eyes narrowing as he studied the screen. For the first time, he hesitated. No one had dared challenge him this way. But in that moment, he realized that Emma Davis was not just a young investor, she was someone to be reckoned with. With a final tap on the bid button, the auctioneer's gavel slammed down. Emma Davis had won. The crowd erupted into applause, but Daniel Hart, sitting across the room, remained still. His gaze locked onto Emma, and for a moment, there was no hostility, only a quiet acknowledgement of a worthy adversary. After the auction, as Emma made her way out of the auction room, her heart was racing. She had done it. She had secured the property, and with it, a foothold that would set her up for success in the competitive real estate market. But as she walked toward the exit, she couldn't shake the feeling that her encounter with Daniel Hart was far from over. The challenge wasn't just about winning this auction. It was about the long game, the relationships, the power dynamics, and, most importantly, the respect she had just earned from one of the most powerful men in the industry. As she stepped out into the crisp evening air, she took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her success settle in. But in the back of her mind, she knew that winning this auction was only the first step. Daniel Hart was a formidable force. He wouldn't back down easily, and she wasn't the type of woman who would let him walk away with everything. The next move would be hers, and she was ready. The days following the auction were a whirlwind of activity for Emma Davis. She had won the property, but now came the hard part, turning it into the profitable asset she had envisioned. The city's real estate market was one of the most competitive in the country, and Emma knew that success in this business wasn't just about securing prime locations. It was about vision, strategy, and above all, connections. Despite her early success, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that her victory in the auction wasn't the end of her journey. The competition wasn't just limited to the people in the room that day. It extended to the very top of the industry. And there, sitting at the helm, was Daniel Hart, the man who seemed to control everything, or at least, that was how it appeared to the outside world. The following week, Daniel Hart's office. Daniel Hart sat behind his sleek glass desk, his fingers steepled in front of him, eyes fixed on the reports in front of him. The property auction had taken a turn he hadn't anticipated. Emma Davis had outbid him, and although the loss wasn't significant, it piqued his curiosity. He wasn't used to losing, and he certainly wasn't used to being challenged by someone like Emma. Most people in the industry saw him as untouchable, but she had looked at him not as a mentor or a rival, but as a stepping stone. Daniel's assistant, Sophie, knocked softly on the door before entering, holding a cup of coffee in her hand. "Sophie, you've got a meeting in 15 minutes with the developers from the West End project. Do you want me to reschedule?" "Daniel, no, let's keep it. I've got a few things to figure out first." Sophie hesitated for a moment before speaking again, knowing well enough not to ask too many questions, but sensing something unusual in Daniel's demeanor. "Sophie, it's about Ms. Davis, isn't it? You've been quiet since the auction." Daniel looked up from his papers, his gaze narrowing slightly. Sophie had been with him for years, and she knew him well enough to sense when something was on his mind. "Daniel, she's good. Too good. I don't like being outbid, and I don't like the way she plays the game. But I'm not going to let that stop me." That afternoon, Emma's office Seema was pacing back and forth in her office, her mind running through the various aspects of the project she had just acquired. She was ready to dive into the redevelopment of the property, but she knew that she had to tread carefully. There was a fine line between ambition and arrogance in the real estate game, and if she crossed it, her competitors, especially someone like Daniel Hart, would find a way to capitalize on her mistakes. Her phone buzzed on her desk, pulling her from her thoughts. It was an email from Daniel Hart's office. Subject: meeting request. Opportunity to discuss. Future collaboration. Emma read the subject line and smirked. She hadn't expected this. After the auction, she knew Daniel wouldn't just accept defeat. The invitation was polite, but loaded with underlying challenges, a subtle suggestion that they could work together on the property. Emma had heard rumors that Daniel often played the long game, manipulating situations to ensure he stayed on top. But Emma wasn't one to be manipulated. She had earned this victory, and if Daniel wanted to talk, He would have to understand one thing. She wasn't a pushover. The next day, Daniel's officer arrived at Hart Enterprises a little earlier than planned, determined to make a statement. She wasn't just here to negotiate the property deal. She was here to establish that she wasn't intimidated by the power Daniel wielded in this industry. She was ushered into his office, where Daniel was already waiting. He stood up as she entered, offering a slight nod of acknowledgement. "Daniel, Emma, glad you could make it. Please, take a seat." She sat across from him, noticing the same stoic expression he always wore, confident, unreadable. He didn't waste any time with pleasantries. "Emma, let's get straight to it. I've read your proposal, and I'm not interested in another partnership that favors you. I won the auction fair and square, and I intend to see this project through on my own terms." Daniel leaned back in his chair, folding his arms across his chest. His eyes were still on her, calculating. She wasn't what he had expected. She wasn't afraid of him, and that intrigued him. "Daniel, I don't expect you to work with me just out of charity. Emma, I'm here because I know that property will be a game changer for both of us. I don't mind taking a back seat to help you build something incredible." Emma was silent for a moment, analyzing his words. It was clear that he was offering something, an advantage, a partnership, even, but she wasn't sure if she could trust him. She had seen too many people like Daniel in the past, always hiding something behind a polished facade. "Emma, I'm not asking for help. What I need is a business partner who understands the value of hard work and vision, not someone who wants to control the project." Daniel's lips curled into a faint smile, as if he was amused by her straightforwardness. "Daniel, I'm not here to control, but we both know how much influence I have in this city. You're smart, Emma. I think you'll realize that soon enough." Later that day, Emma's office. Emma left the meeting with more questions than answers. Daniel had offered her a deal that was hard to turn down. He had the resources, the experience, and the connections she lacked. But Emma wasn't the type to rely on others. She had worked too hard to get where she was, and she wasn't about to let anyone take that from her. As she sat down at her desk, she stared at the documents in front of her. There was no denying the opportunity Daniel presented, but there was also the risk. If she gave him an inch, would he take a mile? The phone rang, snapping her out of her thoughts. Sophie on the phone. "Emma, we just got the first set of design plans. Things are moving faster than we expected. What do you want us to focus on first?" Emma smiled, her confidence returning. She didn't need Daniel to win this. She would prove that she could make this work on her own terms. Emma, focus on the core development first, nothing flashy. We'll do things our way, and if Daniel wants in, he'll have to play by our rules. The days following Emma's meeting with Daniel Hart felt like a game of chess. Every move she made, every decision, was calculated. But she couldn't help but wonder, was she playing with fire by refusing to accept Daniel's offer? He was the kind of man who didn't back down easily, and Emma knew she had to tread carefully. But she was no stranger to high stakes, and she was ready to prove that she didn't need anyone's help to succeed. A week later, Emma's office Seema sat at her desk, reviewing the final architectural blueprints for the property. Her team had worked tirelessly, and the plans were starting to take shape. The old building was going to be transformed into a modern masterpiece. Her vision for the project was coming to life. But no matter how great the designs were, she knew that without the right financial backing, the project could still fall apart. Her phone buzzed on her desk, pulling her from her thoughts. She glanced at the screen, and her heart skipped a beat. Was an email from Daniel Hart's office again. It wasn't a proposal this time, but an invitation to an event, a charity gala that Daniel hosted every year. She had heard about it, of course. It was a prestigious event that brought together the city's top business leaders, philanthropists, and power brokers. Everyone in the industry would be there. The thought of attending the gala made Emma pause. It wasn't just about socializing, it was about making the right connections. This could be her chance to take the next step in her business. She didn't need Daniel's help, but the reality was that collaborating with him could open doors that no one else could. She tapped the screen and typed her response, making sure her words were polite but firm. Emma, thank you for the invitation. I'd be honored to attend and look forward to meeting with you in person. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. She knew what this event represented. It wasn't just about networking, it was about setting the stage for whatever came next. That evening, the charity gala, night of the gala, arrived, and Emma stood before her full-length mirror, adjusting the lapels of her black dress. It was simple yet elegant, classic, understated yet striking. Just like her, she was ready for this. She had earned her place at the table, and she wasn't going to let anyone forget that. The gala was held in one of the grandest ballrooms in the city, decorated in gold and crystal, with a live orchestra playing in the background. Emma made her way through the crowd, her heels clicking against the polished marble floors. She could feel the eyes of the city's elite on her, but she kept her head high. It wasn't long before she spotted Daniel Hart across the room. He was surrounded by a group of well-dressed individuals, all laughing and enjoying their drinks. But even in a crowd of people, his presence was unmistakable, charismatic, with an air of authority that made people listen when he spoke. Emma took a deep breath and walked toward him, knowing that this meeting was inevitable. As she approached, Daniel turned and saw her coming. He gave her a small, almost imperceptible smile, one of those smiles that was equal parts acknowledgement and challenge. He excused himself from the group and made his way toward her. Daniel, Emma, I'm glad you could make it. I wasn't sure you'd actually show up. Double quotes, Emma smiling. I never back down from an opportunity, Daniel. You know that. Daniel chuckling. I admire that about you. You're not afraid of a challenge. They exchanged pleasantries, and for a brief moment, the tension between them was almost palpable. They both knew the stakes were high. This wasn't just about a social event. It was about testing each other, seeing where the other stood. Daniel, tell me, Emma, how is the project going? I heard the plans are nearly finalized. Emma's lips curved into a confident smile. She knew this was his way of feeling her out. Was she succeeding? Was she willing to give him a peek into her progress? But she wasn't going to let him get away with the subtle probing. Not yet, Emma. It's going well. We're right on schedule, and I expect it to be one of the most talked about developments in the city. Daniel nodding thoughtfully. I'm sure it will be. You're a woman who doesn't settle for anything less than the best. Emma felt a spark of challenge in his words. He wasn't giving up, and neither was she. But there was something in his tone, a hint of respect she hadn't expected. Before she could say anything further, one of Daniel's associates came up to him, pulling his attention away. Emma stood silently for a moment, watching him engage with his group. The conversation had shifted, but her mind was racing. Daniel wasn't just a businessman. He was a master manipulator, someone who made everyone feel like they were winning everyone when they weren't. She needed to be careful, but she also knew that the next step was hers to take. She had come this far on her own, but her success depended on more than just her abilities. It depended on making the right alliances. Emma excused herself from the crowd and made her way outside for a breath of fresh air. As she stepped out onto the balcony, she gazed at the city lights below. The weight of the choices ahead felt heavy, but Emma was no stranger to taking risks. She didn't need Daniel Hart to succeed. But perhaps, just maybe, with the right terms and the right timing, their collaboration could lead to something far bigger than either of them imagined. The following week after the charity gala, Emma found herself in a whirlwind of meetings, design revisions, and strategy sessions. The real estate development project was moving forward as planned, but something had changed since her conversation with Daniel Hart. Despite her initial confidence in standing on her own, the more she thought about their exchange, the more she realized that Daniel was not someone who could be easily dismissed. She had won the auction, but she knew that winning wasn't always enough. In the world of high-stakes business, alliances mattered just as much as the deals themselves. And Daniel was a formidable force in this city. His name alone carried weight. Emma was beginning to wonder if she had made a mistake by dismissing his offer so quickly. Emma's office early morning was sitting at her desk, reviewing the revised architectural plans for her project when she heard a soft knock at the door. She looked up, expecting it to be one of her team members. But to her surprise, it was Sophie, Daniel's assistant. "Sophie, Ms. Davis. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Mr. Hart would like to speak with you. He's scheduled a meeting for this afternoon." Emma raised an eyebrow, surprised but not entirely shocked. After their brief interaction at the gala, she wasn't sure what Daniel was playing at. Was this an opportunity for them to discuss a partnership again? Or was he just trying to reassert his dominance in the industry? Emma sighing, "All right, I'll be there. Let him know I'll meet him in the afternoon." Sophie nodded and left, leaving Emma to contemplate the unexpected invitation. She had no intention of making it easy for him, but at the same time, she knew this was a meeting she couldn't afford to miss. That afternoon, Daniel's office by the time Emma arrived at Hart Enterprises. The afternoon sun had already begun to dip behind the skyline, casting a golden glow over the city. The lobby was as grand as always, sleek, polished, and intimidating. She was escorted to the top floor, where Daniel's office was located. The elevator doors opened, and as Emma stepped out, she could feel the familiar weight of the place pressing down on her. This was Daniel's territory, and she was a visitor. When she reached his office, Daniel was already standing by the large glass windows, overlooking the city. His posture was calm, his expression unreadable, but there was a subtle tension in his shoulders that caught Emma's attention. He turned as she entered. "Daniel, Emma, glad you could make it." Emma smiling thinly, "Of course. I didn't want to keep you waiting." Daniel chuckled, though it wasn't the same light-hearted laugh from their last meeting. There was something more guarded about him today. "Daniel, I'll get straight to the point. I've been thinking about your project, and I believe we can help each other. You have the vision and drive, but what you might need is leverage resources, connections. That's where I come in." Emma didn't blink. She had expected this. "Emma, and what do you want in return, Daniel? You've already made it clear that you have plenty of resources. What's the catch?" Daniel's eyes locked onto hers, and for a brief moment, the playful undertones vanished, replaced by a look of seriousness. He walked over to his desk and sat down, motioning for her to take a seat across from him. "Daniel, I'm offering you a partnership, Emma, a full collaboration. I've seen the work you've done, and I know what you're capable of. But without the right connections and backing, even the best ideas can fall short. You've seen that for yourself." Emma leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms as she considered his words. This was exactly what she had been trying to avoid: a partnership with Daniel Hart. She didn't need anyone's handouts, especially not his. But the reality of the situation was that Daniel had something she didn't. Influence. Emma. What exactly would this partnership look like, Daniel? And what's in it for you? Daniel, you'll lead the project, but I'll provide the funding, the connections, and the muscle to ensure that no one stands in our way. You'll have full control over the development, but with my backing, you won't have to worry about competitors, regulations, or anything else that might slow us down." He paused, studying her face for any sign of hesitation. "Daniel, think of it as a strategic alliance. You get to maintain your independence, but you also get the security that comes with partnering with someone who knows how to navigate this business." Emma didn't answer immediately. Her mind was racing, weighing the pros and cons. On one hand, Daniel's offer was undeniably tempting. With his resources, the project could take off faster than she had ever imagined. On the other hand, giving Daniel any control, even just a fraction, was something she wasn't willing to do lightly. "Emma, and if I refuse?" "Daniel, then you go it alone. But I'd be surprised if that's what you want. You're ambitious, Emma. You don't play small. This is the opportunity you've been waiting for." For a long moment, the two of them just stared at each other. Emma's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. She had always prided herself on doing things on her own terms. But the truth was, she didn't have all the resources Daniel had at his disposal. Was it really worth the risk to go up against someone like him? Emma finally breaking the silence. "I'll think about it. But don't expect me to give you anything without earning it." Daniel smiled slightly, leaning back in his chair. "Daniel, I wouldn't expect anything less." Later that evening, Emma sat in her apartment later that night. The city lights twinkling below, she couldn't shake the weight of her decision. Daniel's offer was tempting. She had already come so far, and the idea of turning him down felt like she might be closing the door on a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But at the same time, she knew that if she gave in too easily, she might lose herself. Emma Davis was a fighter, and she wasn't going to let anyone, not even Daniel Hart, dictate the terms of her success. Tomorrow, she would make her decision. But tonight, she just needed a moment to breathe. The morning after her meeting with Daniel Hart, Emma could hardly focus on anything else. The weight of his offer had been heavy, and despite her instincts to go it alone, there was a part of her that wondered if this partnership could truly benefit her. The offer had been clear: resources, power, connections, everything she could need to ensure her project's success. But at what cost? She spent the early morning hours going over her options, looking at the plans for the development project she'd just secured. The property had potential, but Emma knew that without the right backing, it would be a struggle to push the project forward at the scale she wanted. That's where Daniel came in. If she accepted, it would give her the opportunity to grow, to rise faster than she had ever imagined. But what would she be giving up in the process? Would she still maintain control? Emma's thoughts were interrupted when her phone buzzed. It was a message from Sophie, Daniel's assistant. "Sophie, Mr. Hart would like to discuss the next steps in person. He's requested a meeting tomorrow morning. Can I schedule it for you?" Emma didn't hesitate. She already knew what her decision would be. As much as she hated to admit it, Daniel's resources were too valuable to ignore. She typed a quick response. Emma, yes, please schedule it. I'll be there. The next day, Daniel's officer arrived at Hart Enterprises early, knowing she needed to be prepared for whatever Daniel had planned. The office was as intimidating as ever, sleek, polished, and luxurious. As she stepped into the elevator and made her way to the top floor, she couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. This meeting would be pivotal. When the doors opened to Daniel's office, he was already there, seated at his desk with a cup of coffee in front of him. He looked up as Emma entered, a slight smile playing at the corners of his lips. Daniel, morning. Emma, glad to see you made the decision. Emma nodded, trying to keep her composure, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just another business meeting. There was something more at stake here. Emma. Morning, Daniel. I've thought about your offer, and I'm ready to move forward on one condition. Daniel raised an eyebrow, intrigued but not surprised. He had known that Emma was smart, but he also understood her hesitation. She wasn't someone who made decisions lightly. Daniel, go on, Emma. I'm willing to accept your partnership, but I will lead this project. I won't have you coming in and taking control at every turn. This is my vision. If you want to collaborate, you'll respect that. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his eyes narrowing slightly. Emma could see that he was processing her words, weighing her resolve. This wasn't what he had expected. He had expected to call the shots. Daniel, I respect your confidence. But let's be clear, Emma. I'm offering you more than just money. I'm offering you the influence and expertise you need to bring this project to life. You can't do this on your own, not at the level you're aiming for. Emma met his gaze, her posture unwavering. This wasn't about ego or pride. It was about ensuring that she had full control over the direction of the project. She had worked too hard to let someone take that away from her. Emma, I don't need your influence. What I need is your resources. If you're willing to provide that, then we have a deal. But if you want to come in and take over, I'll walk away. There was a long silence as Daniel stared at her. For a moment, she thought he might challenge her, but instead, he stood up and walked over to the window, his back to her. She could sense that he was considering his next move carefully. Daniel, you're strong, Emma. I respect that. But remember, there's a reason people don't just partner with me. I don't do things halfway. Emma stood up, walking over to the desk to face him. Emma, I'm not asking for half. I'm asking for a partnership. A true partnership. Daniel turned to face her, his expression softening ever so slightly. He could see the determination in her eyes. She wasn't like the others. Daniel, all right, Emma. You've got your terms. We'll move forward on your terms. But understand this, once we commit, we'll be in this together. And if you ever need my expertise, don't hesitate to ask. Emma didn't smile, but she felt a sense of relief wash over her. This was the start of something new. A collaboration, not a takeover. And that, in itself, was a victory. Emma, I'll hold you to that. And I won't let you down. That afternoon, a new beginning, as Emma left Hart Enterprises. She felt the weight of the decision lift from her shoulders. She had made her choice, she had secured a powerful ally, but on her terms. Daniel Hart had agreed to her conditions, and now it was time to make this partnership work. She walked to her car, her mind buzzing with the possibilities that lay ahead. The development project was already taking shape, but with Daniel's backing, it would move faster, expand further. and reach heights she hadn't even dreamed of. But Emma wasn't just thinking about the project. She was thinking about Daniel. She knew this partnership wasn't going to be easy. There was still a tension between them, an unspoken challenge that both of them were aware of. Emma had seen the way he looked at her, the subtle mix of admiration and calculation. And though she didn't want to admit it, she knew this was far from just business. There was something more between them, something neither of them could ignore for long. As she drove through the city, looking out at the skyline, she thought about the path ahead. This partnership would change everything, but it wouldn't be without its challenges. Still, Emma was ready. She had fought for her success, and now, with Daniel Hart by her side, she was prepared for whatever came next. The weeks following Emma's agreement to partner with Daniel Hart were a whirlwind of meetings, renovations, and strategy. The project was moving forward at a speed she had never experienced before. With Daniel's resources and her vision, they had begun to turn the once dilapidated property into a high-end, luxury building that would soon become the new focal point of the city's skyline. It was everything she had dreamed of, but Emma knew that the price of success wasn't always just monetary. Despite the progress, there was something unsettled about her partnership with Daniel. Every decision, every conversation with him felt like a careful dance. He was constantly present, his influence in every corner of the project, but he kept his distance. Emma respected his expertise, but there was always an undercurrent of tension. Like they were both trying to outmaneuver each other in a game that no one fully understood. At late night, Emma's office. It was nearing midnight when Emma found herself in her office, surrounded by blueprints, financial reports, and construction updates. The glow of her desk lamp was the only light in the room, casting long shadows across the walls. She had been at this for hours, but something kept her up. The looming deadlines, the pressures of the project, and Daniel's silence over the past few days. He had been distant lately. His once constant involvement in the project had decreased, leaving Emma to wonder if something had changed. She needed to talk to him, just as she picked up her phone to dial Daniel's number. The office door creaked open. Emma looked up, surprised to see Daniel standing there, his tall frame outlined by the dim light in the hallway. Emma surprised but relieved. "Daniel, what are you doing here this late?" Daniel stepping into the room, his voice calm. "I could ask you the same thing. Working late again, huh?" Emma smiled faintly, trying to keep the conversation casual. But she could feel the tension rising between them, even in the silence. "Emma, just trying to catch up. You've been a bit quiet lately. Everything going well on your end?" Daniel didn't immediately respond. Instead, he walked over to the window, staring out at the city lights below, his face still unreadable. "Daniel, I've been ... thinking about the project, about the future." Emma put her phone down, leaning back in her chair, waiting for him to continue. She knew this wasn't just about the project. He had been distant for days, and she could sense he was conflicted. "Emma, softly, what's bothering you?" There was a long pause before he spoke again, his voice quieter, more vulnerable than usual. "Daniel, I've always known how to control things, projects, people, markets. But with this, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. You're ambitious, Emma. You've got drive. But sometimes I wonder if you realize what you're really getting into." Emma stood up, moving toward him, trying to read his expression in the low light. She could feel the walls he had built around himself, but she wasn't about to back down. "Emma, what are you saying? Are you backing out? Because if that's what you want, we can walk away right now. I've done this before, and I can do it again without your help." Daniel turned to face her, his eyes locked with hers. There was no anger in his gaze, but something else, something that wasn't just about business. Emma had seen it before, a flicker of something deeper in his eyes, but she had never acknowledged it. Now it was all too clear. Daniel, shaking his head, "I'm not backing out. But I need to know if you're ready for what this really means. This project, this partnership, it's not just about the money. It's about power, influence, and making choices that have consequences." Emma stepped closer, her heart racing. She wasn't sure where this conversation was going, but she knew that what Daniel was offering wasn't just about business. There was something personal behind his words, and she had to face it, even if it meant confronting the unspoken tension between them. Emma gently, "I'm not afraid of the consequences. Daniel, I've been building this for myself. I've earned every step of it, and I'm ready to take on whatever comes next." Daniel's expression softened slightly, but his eyes still held that wariness, the same guarded look he had when he first met her. "Daniel, you think you're ready. But trust me, the stakes get higher the closer we get to the top. Once you get to a certain point, there's no turning back." Emma took a deep breath, stepping closer, her voice steady. "Emma, I'm not turning back. This is what I want. And if you're with me, we'll make it happen. But if you're not, then I'll find another way. I'm not going to let anyone hold me back." For a long moment, Daniel just stood there, studying her. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, but in it, Emma felt a shift. There was something vulnerable in his eyes, something that made him seem more human. Less the cold, calculating CEO she had first met. Daniel, softly, "You're stubborn." "Emma, but maybe that's exactly why this will work." Emma's pulse quickened. She wasn't sure what to make of his words, but for the first time, she saw a glimpse of the man beneath the walls he had built. The man who had always been in control, but now, in this moment, was slowly letting go. Emma smiling, "Stubbornness is what gets things done, Daniel. I'm not backing down. And I'll prove it." The next day, a new resolve. The next morning, as Emma sat in her office, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The conversation with Daniel had left her with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. This partnership was not going to be easy. It wasn't just about the project anymore. It was about trustable learning to rely on each other. Despite the walls they both had built, Emma wasn't sure if Daniel was ready to let her in. But she knew one thing for sure. She wasn't afraid of the cost. She had come this far on her own, and she was determined to see this through. No matter what, as she reviewed the final reports for the project, a knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. She looked up to see Sophie standing in the doorway, holding a document in her hand. "Sophie, Emma, I think you'll want to see this. It's from Daniel's office. He's agreed to the new terms you proposed." Emma smiled to herself, feeling a rush of satisfaction. The project was moving forward, and she was in control. But deep down, she knew that the real challenge was just beginning. And with Daniel Hart by her side, she would have to navigate not just the business world, but the complexities of their evolving relationship. The following days after Emma's decision to push forward with the partnership were both exhilarating and exhausting. Her development project was moving at full speed, the team was energized, and the resources Daniel had provided were allowing things to progress quicker than she could have ever imagined. But, despite the success, Emma couldn't shake the sense of unease that lingered in the air between her and Daniel Hart. Their professional relationship was progressing smoothly. They met frequently, discussing plans, strategies, and future investments. Daniel had proven to be a valuable asset, but Emma still couldn't fully trust him, not yet, at least. He was still a man of mystery, too calculated, too controlled for her to read him completely. And now, with the project moving toward its final stages, Emma felt a strange tension between them that wasn't just about business anymore. Late evening. Daniel's opposite was late one evening when Emma received a text from Sophie. Daniel's assistant, Sophie, Mr. Hart, wants to meet. Urgent discussion about the project. Emma felt a knot form in her stomach. Urgent, that wasn't a word she liked to hear, especially when it came from Daniel. They hadn't discussed anything critical for days, so she couldn't help but wonder what he wanted. She quickly grabbed her coat and headed out. The ride to Hart Enterprises felt longer than usual. Her mind raced with possibilities. Was he pulling out? Was there a problem with the development? She couldn't afford to lose momentum now, not with everything riding on this project. As she entered the familiar building and made her way to Daniel's office, she was greeted by Sophie, who led her inside. The office was darker than usual, the lights dimmed to a soft glow, and Daniel was standing by the window, his back to her. The mood in the room was different, tense, heavy, as though Daniel had something on his mind that he wasn't ready to share. Emma, Daniel, what's going on? You said it was urgent. Daniel turned around, his face set in that familiar, impenetrable mask. But Emma noticed a subtle shift in his eyes, a flicker of something she couldn't place. Daniel, I wanted to talk about the direction of the project. It's not just about the building anymore. Emma, there are bigger things at play here. He gestured for her to sit down, but she remained standing, her arms crossed in front of her. She didn't like the tone in his voice. It was almost like he was implying something much more than a business discussion. Emma, what are you talking about? We've been on the same page with this project from the beginning. There's no need for drastic changes now. Daniel, his voice low, almost contemplative. I'm not talking about the project. I'm talking about us. You and me. Emma blinked, taken aback. This wasn't the conversation she had expected. The businesswoman in her wanted to focus on the development. But the other part of Hertha, part that had been silently battling with her emotions, knew this was inevitable. She had felt it building for weeks. Emma, what do you mean? We're partners in this. I've made it clear I'm not looking for anything more than that. Daniel's gaze sharpened, his jaw clenched. He took a few steps closer to her, the air between them thickening. He was close enough now for Emma to feel the intensity radiating from him. She fought the urge to step back, standing her ground instead. Daniel, I know what you've said, but actions speak louder than words, Emma. You've never made it easy for me, but I can't pretend I don't see what's happening between us. I'm not blind. Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She hadn't expected this. She had thought she could keep things professional, that she could control the situation. But now, with Daniel so close, the lines between business and personal were blurring, and she wasn't sure she could walk that tightrope any longer. Emma, this is about the project. Let's stick to that. But Daniel wasn't backing down. He took a step closer, and Emma could feel the heat of his presence. Daniel, you think I'm just a businessman to you. That's what this is about. You're wrong, Emma. I can't separate the two anymore. The project, the partnership, it's all connected to you. I've tried to keep this professional, but I can't ignore what's been building between us. Emma opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Her mind was racing, torn between the businesswoman who had built her career on being strong and the woman who was starting to see the cracks in her own resolve. She had known this moment would come. She had felt it, the tension, the pull between them, but now that it was in the open, she didn't know how to handle it. Emma, her voice shaking slightly. Daniel, we can't let this complicate things. I'm here to build a future, to prove myself, not just to you, but to everyone. Daniel, I know that, but sometimes, Emma, you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Not to me, not to anyone. I've seen what you can do, and I respect you more than you know. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture that sent a jolt through her. She stared at him, her heart pounding. Emma, this isn't just about respect. It's about control. I can't let you control me, Daniel. He took a step back, his expression hardening. Daniel, I'm not trying to control you, but I need you to understand that this project, this partnership, it's about trust. Not just in business, but in each other. If you want this to work, we both have to be honest with ourselves. The morning after Emma woke up the next morning, the conversation with Daniel still heavy in her mind. She hadn't expected things to escalate so quickly, and now she was left with more questions than answers. Daniel had crossed a line, and in doing so, he had forced Emma to confront something she wasn't ready to face. The project was still her priority, but now she wasn't just thinking about the building. She was thinking about the cost of ambition and the price of trusting someone as powerful, as complicated, and as determined as Daniel Hart. Emma knew that she had to make a choice, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to let her emotions get the better of her. The professional world she had worked so hard to build could come crashing down if she wasn't careful, but the pull between her and Daniel was undeniable. The days after their heated conversation were filled with a palpable tension that neither Emma nor Daniel could escape. It was as if the air around them was charged, every glance and every word carrying weight. Emma had always prided herself on being in control, but Daniel had thrown her off balance. She wasn't sure what this was between them, whether it was attraction, respect, or something else entirely, but it was complicating everything. Late afternoon, Emma's officer sat in her office, staring out at the city below, lost in thought. The project was moving forward at full speed, but despite the progress, her mind kept drifting back to the conversation with Daniel. His words echoed in her head. This is about trust, not just in business, but in each other. What did that mean? Was Daniel offering more than just a partnership? Emma knew that she couldn't let personal feelings interfere with the project. She had worked too hard, and her career meant everything to her. But the pull she felt toward Daniel was undeniable, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep ignoring it. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a text from Sophie. Sophie, Mr. Hart is requesting a meeting with you tonight. He wants to discuss the final stage of the project. I've scheduled it for 7 p.m. Let me know if that works. Emma stared at the message, her stomach tightening. She knew that Daniel had a way of getting under her skin, but she couldn't put off the meeting any longer. She had to face this. Whatever it was between them. 7 p.m., Hart Enterprises. Emma arrived at Hart Enterprises just as the evening sky began to darken. The building, with its sleek, modern design, loomed before her like a fortress. She wasn't nervous, but there was a slight flutter in her chest. She had come here countless times, but tonight felt different, when she entered Daniel's office. He was already there, leaning against the window with a glass of whiskey in hand. He didn't look up when she entered, but his presence filled the room like a storm waiting to break. "Daniel, you're on time." "Good." Emma didn't respond immediately. Walking over to the desk and sitting down. She wasn't going to make this easy for him, not this time. "Emma, I've been busy, but I'm here now." "What's so urgent?" Daniel turned, his eyes locking onto hers. The intensity in his gaze made Emma's pulse quicken, but she refused to show any sign of weakness. "Daniel, it's about the project. But more than that, it's about us. I've been thinking about what we said the other night. I want to make sure we're on the same page moving forward." Emma raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms in front of her. She wasn't sure where this conversation was going, but she knew it wouldn't be just about the project. "Emma, we've been on the same page. We're building this together. There's no need to overcomplicate it." Daniel, smiling slightly, "It's never that simple." "Emma, you know that as well as I do. The stakes are too high for things to stay just business." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She didn't like where this was going. She had been keeping her distance for a reason, and now Daniel was pushing her to confront the truth. But she wasn't ready for that. "Emma, I'm here to do what's best for the project. Nothing more. If you're suggesting that we start mixing business with whatever this is between us, I don't think I'm ready for that." Daniel placed his glass down on the desk and walked over to her. He stopped just a few feet away, close enough that Emma could feel the heat radiating from his body. She could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle between professional and personal. "Daniel, you don't think I know that. I'm not asking you to change everything, Emma. I'm just asking you to consider the bigger picture. We're building something huge here, and I want to know that you're as committed to this, us, as I am." Emma's breath caught in her throat. For the first time, she saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the man who was always in control. The man who never let anyone see his weakness was now standing in front of her, asking for something she wasn't sure she could give. She stood up, needing some space between them. But her voice was steady when she spoke. "Emma, I don't want this to be about us. I want it to be about the project. I want to prove that I can do this on my own without any distractions." Daniel, his voice low, almost pleading. "I'm not asking you to give up your independence, Emma. I'm asking you to trust me, to trust us. We can do this together, but only if we're willing to accept that it's more than just business." There was a long silence between them. Emma's mind was racing, her heart torn between the professional side of Hertha, one that had spent her entire life building her career, and the part of her that was beginning to acknowledge the feelings she had for Daniel. "Emma," her voice softer now, "I don't know if I can do that, Daniel. I don't know if I can let myself trust anyone that way again." Daniel, stepping closer, "You don't have to trust me completely right now, but I need you to understand that this isn't just about the project for me anymore. It's about building something together, a future, and I want that future with you." Emma's breath caught in her chest, her mind swirling. She had fought so hard to keep everything separate, to keep her heart and her career in two different worlds. But Daniel was making it impossible to ignore the fact that they were already crossing a line. Emma, whispering, "I'm not sure I'm ready for this." Daniel, his voice soft but firm, "I think you are, Emma, and I think we both know that what we're building goes beyond anything either of us expected." The next day, a new reality. The following morning, Emma woke up feeling like she had just crossed a line she could never uncross. She had agreed to let Daniel in, but now the weight of that decision was pressing down on her. The project was still moving forward at full speed, and Emma had never been more certain that this was the most important thing in her life. But Daniel had a way of making her question everything. She knew she had to stay focused, but as the day went on, she couldn't shake the feeling that the lines between business and personal were blurring faster than she could handle. Emma had crossed a line, and now there was no turning back. The days after their confrontation were full of tension, but also clarity. Emma couldn't ignore the weight of the decision she had made. The lines between her professional and personal life were now irrevocably blurred, and she was left grappling with the consequences. The project was progressing faster than she could have imagined, thanks to Daniel's resources, but her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't deny that she had feelings for Daniel, feelings that she had tried so hard to suppress. But this wasn't just about emotions. It was about trust, partnership, and the future they were building together. And right now, that future seemed more uncertain than ever. That afternoon, Hart Enterprises Emma sat in Daniel's office once again. But today, things felt different. There was no easy camaraderie between them, no playful banter. Instead, the room felt heavy, filled with unspoken words that neither of them was sure how to say. Daniel stood by the window, staring out at the city below, his usual confident demeanor now tinged with something softer. Emma could see it in his eyes, the vulnerability that had once been buried beneath layers of control. Emma, breaking the silence. "We need to talk about the project, Daniel. There's no time to waste. We're getting close to the launch date, and everything has to go perfectly." Daniel turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "Daniel, you're right, but we need to talk about something else too. Emma, about us." Emma's heart skipped a beat, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had known this conversation was coming. It was inevitable. "Emma, we've already talked about this, Daniel. We agreed business first." Daniel took a step toward her, his eyes never leaving hers. "Daniel, no, I don't think you understand. I've tried to keep this professional, but I can't anymore. I care about you, Emma. I've tried to deny it, but I can't. This project, this partnership, it means more to me than I ever thought it would. And I need you to know that." Emma's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to respond, to tell him that she cared to, but the words didn't come. Emma, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you saying, Daniel?" "Daniel, I'm saying that I can't keep pretending like this is just business anymore. We've built something together, and I don't want to lose it. Or you." Emma closed her eyes, her mind racing. She hadn't expected this, not in the way he was saying it. She had been afraid of this moment for so long, the moment when everything they'd built together would come down to a single choice. "Emma, I can't let my emotions get in the way of this, Daniel. We've worked too hard for this to fall apart because of feelings." Daniel took another step forward, his voice soft but firm. "Daniel, I'm not asking you to make a choice between me and the project. I'm asking you to trust me. We can do this together. But I need to know that you're in this for the long haul, both with the project and with me." Emma looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, she saw past the CEO, past the business mogul, and saw the man who had been fighting for something real, something he wasn't willing to let go of. Emma softly, "I'm in this, Daniel, but we have to do it right. No more pretending. No more games. Daniel smiled. A genuine smile that made Emma's heart skip a beat. Daniel, then let's make this work, together. The final decision, the morning after the next morning. As Emma sat at her desk, staring out at the city, she finally felt a sense of clarity. The decision had been made. She wasn't going to let fear control her anymore. She wasn't going to let her doubts get in the way of what she and Daniel had built, not just the project, but something more. Something real. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Daniel. Daniel, are you ready for the final push? We've got this, Emma. Together, she smiled to herself, her heart feeling lighter than it had in days. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be worth it. With Daniel by her side, they could achieve anything. Months later, the city skyline had changed. The project that had once seemed like a distant dream was now a reality, one of the tallest, most sought-after buildings in the city. Davis and Hart Enterprises had become a name that people recognized, respected, and admired. Emma and Daniel had not only built something tangible, but they had also built something unspoken between them: trust, respect, and a shared future. It hadn't been easy. There had been challenges, moments of doubt, and times when both of them questioned whether they were doing the right thing. But through it all, they had come together. One evening, as they stood together on the balcony of their newly finished building, Emma looked out at the city, the lights twinkling below them. Emma, we did it. Daniel, we did. But more than that, we proved something. Emma, what's that? Daniel, that we can build something real together. Emma smiled, her heart full. The journey had been difficult, but it had been worth every step. They had started as business partners, but now they were something more, something solid, something unshakable. Together, they had created a legacy, and together, they would continue to build. Emma softly, looking at Daniel, together. As the city stretched out before them, Emma knew that this was just the beginning. The future was wide open, and whatever came next, they would face it together.